Who's the worst coworker you've ever had and why? Mine is the worst and the best. When I first started cooking, I worked with this older Mexican lady. She treated me like complete ducking dog crap. She had been at this place forever, and she was the best, and she knew it. She took every opportunity to make me feel like a ducking git, berate me, call out what I was doing wrong. I mean, I was only 17, that knew nothing, and I was sensitive, and it honestly really got to me. When I say she was mean, I mean, she was ducking evil to me. But I made sure I got better, and I wanted to prove this Karen wrong, and slowly I did. I got much better, and she started to treat me really good. It was like that old tough love sort of thing, I guess. I worked with her for years after that. She even started bringing me food. She bought stuff for my daughters after I had them. One year I had mentioned money was really tight around Christmas. You know what she did? She went and bought a bunch of ducking toys for my daughter, wrapped them, and wrote that they were from me on the packaging. This lady went from treating me like a ducking dog to making me a great cook. Then, to helping my family out when I eventually had one. Looking back, I realized she was like a mother figure to me, and I'll forever be thankful that I even got to be around a woman like that. When I finally left that place, I was crying in my car on my last day because I didn't want to leave her. She turned me into a good cook and made my skin thick as duck. I was a sensitive little boy when I met her, and completely different after I left. Sorry for the stupid rant of a story, but I've never told anyone, so I figured this would be a good place for it. You never know who's going to change your life. Story 2. There's 2 people who stand out for me, but only one person I would never work with again. Both are back from my Wendy's days. The first one that stands out is back when I was a fresh manager of a Wendy's and I was 18. I'd only been 18 for like less than a week, so I had never had a closing shift until I was a manager and I wasn't taught basically anything. We were short-staffed one night and the grill cook Nick was fed up with our GM and came to me earlier in the shift saying, "Listen, I'm quitting, but I'm gonna close tonight because it's you and I don't want to duck you over." This kid Ethan was my age, more or less. I can't remember if he was older or younger. Was just such an annoying employee, and he always made the most stupid mistakes. We had a strict no smoking during certain hours policy, which is literally so stupid. But if you were bringing trash out, I didn't mind. Like, who cares? But Nick was stressing, so I sent him out to smoke and calm down. And Ethan was jealous, so he went outside and confronted Nick, saying how he's not allowed to do that, blah, 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 yelling at him, and Nick had already had it. So he comes up to me, who is super busy, and says, "Sorry, I'm out, blame that ducking idiot," pointing at Ethan. And then I literally started crying because I was already so stressed out, and it was like 5 p.m. and we closed at 2 a.m. and I only had myself, Ethan, and one other person working, and Ethan was out at 10. I then proceeded to have the worst night of my life, busy as hell. But also, I had never once worked or closed the grill station, and neither did my one other drive-thru. Closer, we were in the store till about 5 a.m. and still didn't finish everything. If I had proper training beforehand, then it wouldn't have been so bad, but I had literally zero training. Then, the one person I would never want to work with again is this Karen of a manager who is constantly the laziest person you have ever seen yet, yelling at everyone else for any reason possible. She would make employees cry and then make them keep taking orders, interacting with customers. So I wasn't having it. She was mean to them, so I'd be mean to her. I was her assistant manager, and she would take me into the office sometimes, and she would sit on the desk and me in a chair because IDK power move. And she would say, "I know you hate me." And I would say, "Okay, and," like, I'm not gonna lie. I just did my job, made sure others did theirs, and would stick up for my employees because ain't no one getting paid enough to be treated like a piece of crap. I remember one day I made her so mad that she threw her store keys across and said something along the lines, "I ducking quit. I can't stand that, Karen." But I wasn't even working that day, and she sadly didn't quit. She just threw a temper tantrum. One time a customer was hearing how awful she was treating the staff while she was standing there, doing nothing, and on her phone, and the customer yelled at her saying, maybe she should get off her phone and help her crew. And the Karen of a manager really replied, "Yeah, really? Because I'm on my phone ordering them a pizza party right now." We never once had a pizza party. Story 3. I could write a novel about this guy. He got hired because him and the KM had been friends since high school. Negative, combative, rude to for no reason, constantly losing tickets, incompetent, lazy, messy, at least 20 minutes late for every shift. Always had a snide comment when given direction or constructive criticism. He would leave without punching out or telling anyone to drive to the gas station for energy drinks and cigarettes. One night he was having a tantrum because he was tired of being busy and plated something absolutely horrendous looking. I was beyond fed up with him and said, "Bro, no, that looks like crap." He told me he knew that, and I said, "Okay, well, we're not selling it." That was the last time he ever acknowledged my existence. He was finally fired about 2 weeks after that for a no show, and didn't speak to or look at me once in that period. He was the most miserable person I've ever met. Story 4. I worked with a womb combo at this breakfast restaurant, Adam and Scott. Where do I start with either of them? Adam was one of the most prolific multi-substances users I've ever met. He would steal somewhere between 5 to 10 beers and shots throughout the shift, every day. So anywhere you went in, you'd pull out some seasoning or move a Cambro and find an empty tallboy. We had a company bong out back, and we'd all occasionally hit throughout the shift. He would just plow through any weed that someone left back there, though. I caught him multiple times smoking in the back alley, too. He was a pretty good cook, but truly so awful to work with. Constantly careening, trying to get into fights, would hit you if you messed up his system. He was also in an on-again/off-again relationship with the manager, and they'd often both show up to work high out of their minds or too hungover to do much of anything. Scott, on the other hand, man, that guy was pathetic. Likewise, kind of an a-hole sometimes, but often very nice. One of the hardest workers I've ever met, and he would regularly hold down saute and eggs all on his own on weekends. Absolutely deserved double the $16.50 per hour he was making. However, his personal life was an absolute nightmare. He was 29 when he had to have the last of his teeth removed and was without dentures for about 2 months. He lost his teeth because he would drink at least 4 Monsters every day. As I got to work with him longer, he started to share more about his past. When he was younger, he was arrested a bunch of times. This is while he had a common law wife who he regularly cheated on, and by the time I quit, he'd had 5 kids with her. This is because Scott had a dalliance with a fancy lady in an alley while high. This isn't even to mention the restaurant owner, who would regularly show up drunk in the middle of the day and demand shot after shot at the bar, always hitting on women and driving them away. My favorite story about him is the Easter breakfast I worked with him. Both of us hung over as duck. We were one of the busiest breakfast restaurants in Portland and had a line down the block that day. Slammed to the gills, things kept going wrong, and after he accidentally popped one too many over-eases, he leaned his head out the window and screamed, "Happy ducking Easter, everybody!" The entire dining room went completely silent for a minute, and a couple families walked out. I still laugh about that one regularly. Story 5. Worked an Irish pub once, and this short, 40-50-year-old bald guy went through the hiring process with me. I left a tray of cut-prepped chicken out for 5 minutes as I got sidetracked and went to put it in the walk-in. He comes to me like, "If you don't want to work here, then leave." Bro, it was 5 minutes. Then he leaves his batch out for 30 minutes before the manager tells him to put it away. We got told to get serve-safe certificates, and I had no idea what it was. So I asked him if he got his, and he gets mad, saying, "I'm a chef, I don't need that crap duck you talking about." Then lectures me for a couple minutes about his experiences, leaving out how he got fired from all those jobs. He dealt substances and kept his bag in the kitchen early on before getting told to put it away. A new guy that joined mentioned he worked at a daycare, and Baldy asked what daycare. New guy doesn't give out details since that's private. And Baldy goes on a tirade about how his mom is like a big public service figure, therefore he's a good upstanding guy. Threatens to fight the new 6'2", 250 pounds guy. He always made family meals while me and others cooked and prepped the actual menu item. He didn't even clean his family meal dishes afterwards. He smoked weed in the kitchen. He did this once while we were closing and got incoherent and sloppy. Manager said he can only fire people if the person is clearly using on something. I pointed out the hot pipe with weed in it. Manager picks it up, smells it, and Baldy's only response is, "On my mama, that's legal, I swear." Fired on the spot. Manager gave him his paycheck right there and told him to leave. Oh, and he showed me his nudes for some stupid reason from 10 years ago. I'm a straight guy. Duck you, Marcel. Story 6. I got 3, all from different arenas of the food world. But I have to clear up one small fact. At 17, I did a few weeks at BK. Guy training me told me if I loaded the bun toaster wrong, it would jam and cause a big problem. I didn't last very long. Kept causing big problems during rushes. So all I endure is penance for my youth. 3 is just lazy and petulant. At a pizza joint, they literally refused to use portion controls, refused to make Hawaiian pizzas, and would run away when line cleaning started and only laugh when confronted. Enabled by management. 2 was at a corporate account, absolutely could not follow the company rules and would argue about it. They were always food safe, but never company compliant. I really don't care what preference or standards they have if they take the job and sign the paperwork they got to do what they agreed to. No one wants to repeat the same speech about why an extra layer of safety is used by the company. The bones of the issue is insurance, only covers work within the company policy, and non-compliance is ducking costly. Number 1 was at a restaurant franchise. They had been there since day 1 8 years earlier. And while they knew all stations, they only did salad and fry. Usually that would mean if a staff member that's skilled had a station that wasn't too demanding, that skilled teammate would be utilized to assist where needed. Not this one. They wouldn't grab anyone anything for any reason, constantly letting new staff drown and actively questioning the head chef in front of any and all. In one moment of rarity, the GM asked them to help me on hot side to get a large order started. They left raw meat beside my make line while I had shellfish in my hands. Quickly as they scooted away, I told them to return the meat and wipe the mess. Duck and Ass told the Sioux to tell me to clean my own damn station. Immediately, I washed my hands and took off my apron and walk off the line. GM and Sioux get loud, and I just looked at them and asked if insubordination was ever even addressed with that staff member, because I don't put up with that kind of treatment. Sure as crap, they gave them their first write-up ever, and it was less than a week before they were back in their old routine. I moved on instead of putting up with that crap. Story 7. I left the industry because of my coworker I dubbed Methany. I was the breakfast manager at my job, and I was the only breakfast person who survived a new douchebag owner and COVID. So the owner would come to me with any breakfast questions. He hired Methany because he wanted to promote me. But Methany took offense to my age, 37 and in the industry since 17, and she said I shouldn't be telling her how to do her job. So I backed off and let her duck up with the owner's permission. This woman not only didn't know her job after 3 months of working 5 days a week, but she was a hazard in more ways than one. She'd not wash her hands after touching raw chicken, go in the bathroom and out for smoke break with her apron and towel. She had injured me and my coworkers by shoving lowboy doors into our shins. She thought cooking was a full contact sport, and she tried to shove me off the grill a few times. One time she tried shoving my back and pushing me into the grill. She was also stealing a crap ton of food. Like if you asked the owner for something to take home, he'd be cool with it. One day she walked out with half a meatloaf, meatballs, and some dinner rolls. I don't know why, but she really likes meatloaf. I told the owner so many times she was 20 minutes late for work. Every day she stole a ton of product off of him. He did nothing. It was always he'd have a talk with her, but he never did, and the excuse would be we were short-handed and we needed her. Owner was very shocked when a few months later I gave my notice. I was doing her job, my job, helping with prep, and supposed to be learning how to be a manager. I was burnt out, so he said he really couldn't fire her. Joke was on him because she quit with no notice just weeks before I was leaving. And he also didn't even attempt to hire a replacement for me. She got a job by saying she was the kitchen manager at his place and stole our pictures off of FB and said she came up with them and made them. She lasted 2 weeks and was fired for stealing and not knowing how to cook. Story 8. I could complain about this dude forever. Worked in a chain kitchen, high school stoner nerd boy is there. Complains about literally cannot handle making more than 3 things during any given rush. He was so dumb. I'm generally very patient and will explain everything. But this guy would act like he knew everything. He asked what kind of tree carrots grow on. He thought oranges only came in cans and were a man-made thing, not a fruit. He thought people poked holes in Swiss cheese on purpose. He would refuse to listen to the truth about any of these things. He would get angry to the point of telling in someone's face. He would take 40-minute craps and moan the whole time. I don't know if it was really craps and I don't want to know. He thought that chicken had to temp at 350 degrees because that's what the oven was set at. He thought bread was gluten-free because it went in the oven and came out sterile. He thought that we used red tongs for meat because they use red capes in bullfights. He thought that seafood could be farmed on like a cattle ranch, just fish chilling in the grass, and that was farm raised. He thought that chicken the meat and chicken the animals were different and claimed to be vegetarian because chickens are vegetarian, it's not meat. He thought that green beans were dyed green because he'd seen red kidney beans and couldn't be convinced there are thousands of subspecies of beans. He thought he was going to make it big with Bitcoin and let everyone know it. He owned like 0.01 of something small, and he would not shut up about how he was the only one who would be rich and we'd be stuck flipping burgers. He thought that middle names weren't legal names or part of them, and would constantly say he couldn't believe how many forms he had to fill out that asked for them. He thought that degreaser could be used in lieu of hand soap. He had to lock it away from him. I can't. I couldn't and I won't. I don't understand. I feel bad. He had such a failed upbringing. But duck am I glad I never have to deal with him again. Story 9. In a kitchen, Craphead would micromanage every little ducking task I did, often with useless or cross-contaminating advice. In his process of prepping chicken to get steamed, he'd leave the raw chicken juice sopping plastic wrap crap in with the cardboard box into our recycling bin. He didn't quit doing that until me and the receiver, who had to deal with cardboard breakdown and baler duties, went to the shop manager together. I started working doubles to start saving some money, and it meant learning for table service items like honey whipped butter and whatnot. I got verbal instructions and wrote them down from the kitchen manager and for manager on what temp consistency they wanted butter whipped in the stand mixer for service, but Craphead clearly knew better and was constantly putting in his unsolicited and incorrect 2 cents. This place had a composting dumpster farms in the area would pick up from. His method for cracking 120 eggs for 2 line batches of scrambled eggs ready to cook was to put all the goddamn eggs into a china cap and smash them through. Then he'd throw the eggshell mix into the trash, despite me and other people telling him that crap was compostable and would take him maybe 5 paces more to take care of. He'd jump on dish pit because they're so slammed. There were almost always at least 1-2 people on dish per shift, and not do any ducking prep work for an entire shift. So me and the badass Oaxaca prep cook would have to bust our asses for 1.5 shifts to make up for things Craphead didn't do. He called out frequently with baby mama drama. Frankly, a relief to not deal with his micromanaging and crafty work. Made gross passes at most of the waitstaff 10 to 15 years younger than him. Never washed his hands after his cigarette breaks, and placed his blaring speaker on the shelf right next to my head at full blast, and we nearly came to blows when I turned the speaker down. I could go on about this a whole all day. I hate that so much, and it pushed me to putting in notice and taking a job at a COVID testing site at the height of the pandemic. Conversely, the other prep cook from Oaxaca is probably my favorite kitchen friend in my career. Story 10. There was this one FOH guy at a little cafe I worked at a couple of years ago. Mid-20s, granola hippie kind of dude. His energy was super upfront and positive in an almost toxic sort of way, but there was something a bit off. He got really overly chummy with the young ladies up front, to the point that one of them, who was 16 at the time, confided in me that he found her on Instagram and was sending her weird messages about how he knows she's young, but they should be together and such. She went on to say he got really gross and lurid after that, but wouldn't show me out of fear that I would do something to him. Fair point. Within a few days of this, he was going around saying he was going to weasel his way into the owner's marriage, boot her very aggressive and intimidating husband co-owner, and copy his tattoos on himself to take his place in her life. Finally, as his last act, he came in the next day and walked back to the kitchen and proceeded to sit down cross-legged on the end of the line and told the kitchen that he had to move out of state to be rebirthed by his mother in Virginia, so he was quitting and going off to do that. We escorted the 4 staff their cars for a bit after that. Another quick notable one was a KM for a different place, same restaurant group, who I and the rest of the kitchen witnessed screaming at all of the J1 folks, almost get into a fist fight with one of them, repeatedly, verbally and physically harassed the female staff, and whose volume was always up to 11. One night, the entire dish crew walked out because he kept screaming and throwing things at them in the pit. Real stand-up guy. That one, story 11. A guy got hired as a dishwasher, hadn't really ever had a job before, and had been in some trouble with the law in the past. But we hired him. He was a really good worker. The dish pit never looked so clean. He was charming as could be, and everybody loved this guy. He was Peter Principled into a promotion to prep cook a few months in, and everything changed. It turned out the guy was a major alcoholic, which is not surprising in the restaurant industry. But this guy had also been sober for years when we hired him. He never mentioned it, which is kind of surprising for the restaurant business. One of this restaurant's signature items was an after-dinner digestive, a liquor called limoncello. We made this in-house, about 10 gallons a week. A single batch required the zest of about 50 sours of lemons and about 8 gallons of grain alcohol for the first step. It was quite easy for a person to smudge the numbers and make 11 gallons without anyone knowing otherwise. For a while, no one noticed, but when you are drinking cups of Italian jungle juice, 2 at a time, people will start to notice. This super good worker and good guy turned into a monster. He would argue with you about everything, but the arguments didn't seem to seek a purpose. They just meandered in confrontation. Every item of food he made tasted off, and in retrospect, this feels even worse. His charming nature turned into this weird, narcissistic con man type personality, and every woman in that restaurant had a complaint about him. And I think it was a bartender that actually got into a fight with him at one point because of this. And until the day that he was literally unable to secure his pants to his waist, the bosses didn't believe he was drinking. I can still see him standing there in the prep kitchen, his pants bunched just above his knees, holding a stack of hotel pans as lids spilled from the top to the floor, all while he was berating a dishwasher for not having done something that he himself was supposed to be doing. It still took the chef a week to fire this guy. Story 12. I had a guy that was a hole. He was the type of guy that worked somewhere fancy before coming to our kitchen, so he had to make sure to remind you that when I worked at XYZ, I ran the whole kitchen. I'm the reason the place is still standing. If that's so, why are you here then? Anyways, he was a line cook like everyone else, but kept pretending he was the boss of the line, even fighting the line leader and pretending to be extra friendly with the executive chef, who was also incompetent, which is why he barely ever got into trouble when he broke a rule. He would always be finding ways of blaming everyone else whenever he did something wrong. Somehow this man got promoted to sous chef because he was threatening to leave if they didn't, and the place couldn't afford to lose someone at the time. Will, I want you to know this were the worst 3 weeks of my life before I quit. I remember dropping a pan of raw chicken breast during the rush, so I started cleaning my mess and threw them in the trash. This man pulled me aside, asking me why I threw them away. You could have still used them. That's a waste of food. I stared at him with so much anger inside my body at that point. I told him no. The chicken fell to the floor. I was not about to serve that to people. I instantly went to the other sous chef and told him about it, and he got pissed off too. I think he got a good talking to because he didn't talk to me the rest of my stay there. He was the most incompetent piece of garbage I knew. Story 13. I had a guy fake his father's death for a day off, and he didn't just say that his dad died, but staged an entire production. It began with our GM getting a call from someone claiming to be his mother, saying dad was in hospital and this guy needed to call home ASAP. This was pre-cell phones, obviously. He was on the schedule for that afternoon. Before he arrived, the same person called back to say his dad had died, and we needed to break the news to him. We sat with him in the office while he cried for almost 2 hours. We sent him home, and I personally double-shifted for the next week to cover his absence. 2 days later, he showed up in a suit, pulling a suitcase. He said his brother was coming to pick him up, and they were driving up country for the funeral. Then he was going to stay with his mom for a few days and would let us know when he was back in town. He took photos to show the folks back home the great guys he worked with. We all hugged him and gave him our best wishes. That night, our first cook ran into him at a club with a bunch of his friends a couple of miles away. He never even came back to get his stuff. Story 14. Worked with a guy who was a recovering med addict turned heavy smoker. He got the job because his mom, who was an addict user, was a regular at a different bar the owner owned. More of a dive bar. He was hired on at the place I worked. That was a bit more classy bar. Food, scratch mayos, buns, salsas, hand-puttied burgers and such. Worked with him for about 3 weeks until I told the owner I have to work at another one of his different other places he owned, otherwise he loses me. Those 3 weeks every day was his first day. If a ticket came in for something, I showed him every day, multiple times a day. For the past 2 weeks, I had to tell him every step of the process, otherwise he would sit and dog duck and just stare at us. Then, the last few days before I moved on, he seemed to have an idea that if you touch a chit, it is yours to make completely yourself. We ran stations at this place, so this was something he thought up on his own accord. If it was slow and he was doing prep, he wouldn't. I could understand. But even 10 chips on a board, he would dog duck and only do 1 bill of those, and only 1. So he would be jumping stations people were at to start his 1 bill. I nearly just walked out on that owner my last day there. In hindsight, I should have. Too much substances use among the owner and his buddy friends he would hire. Story 15. Had a kid come to work for us. I was Sue's, and he was dish prep. He didn't have any kitchen experience. He came in with a chef jacket with his name on it and an expensive apron. His brand new knife bag with brand new knives that he didn't know how to use. He was using tweezers for everything and would scold people for using tongs. Never cooked a steak. Didn't know mother sauces. So we pretty much just kept him on dish, which he didn't like as he fancied himself some big shot because he watched a cooking show. My favorite was when I'm making something, he would come over and say something like, "That's not how it's done," or "Can I show you how to do it?" Mother ducks get the duck out of my face. He was insufferable. If I asked to peel potatoes, he would go to the bathroom, where I could only surmise he was Googling it. My chef and I took a shot of whiskey before service, and he had the balls to go up to my chef and say with the righteous fury and said, "You're not allowed to do that. I could have you both fired." Well, the whole line just started laughing. Chef just told him to leave and that he was not cut out for this kind of work. He went to the GM and told him he had to fire us, which just the icing on the cake when this guy asked the kid what was the last kitchen you worked at. And they said, "Get the duck out of my restaurant." Many cheers and merriment in the bow. He also wore polo shirts under his fancy chef coat and slacks under his cooking pants. Ew. Story 16. I need to tell. The worst coworker I ever had, thank God, luckily quits the 25th of September. Let me tell you about this dude. He is 25 and convinced he will improve the restaurant. It's a chain restaurant, mind you. We have to use wooden planks for burgers, but he doesn't because it takes too much space. We have to give a half rib for kids. He gives double because it's not enough. No sauce on the kids' burgers. 1 slice of cheese. This guy puts 2 slices in sauce. When a customer asks for no sauce, he will always put that herb butter on the plate, using like 3 or 4 slices. Oh, and did I mention he comes into the kitchen, does 0 prep work, uses everything up, then leaves to let us refill everything the day after. This has resulted in him ducking up many a service. But of course, it's never his fault, always mine or our other coworker for not refilling his kitchen. He never cleans. What's even worse, he uses liquid butter on everything. We have a grill and he is convinced he must put butter on every steak because it lets in the heat, but that results in the wall by the grill being completely gold after 1 shift, and he does not clean it. The fryer gets real yellow gold after he uses it, but he also never cleans it because it's impossible to remove. The oven, normally silvers, is always gold after he uses it, and so he takes as long as me to clean, but nothing is clean because he just walks around playing music, talking to people, while he should just clean his kitchen. Duck. I don't like him. He never wears a vest, but a t-shirt because it's too hot. He doesn't even wear a hat. In an open kitchen. Oh, goddamn. I could go on and on, but my thumbs hurt. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I've worked with so many awful people, it's hard to pin down what the worst one is. I've worked with multiple people who were extremely nice to everyone's face, but as soon as they could, they'd talk huge amounts of crap about anyone behind their backs. The kinds of pieces of crap who love to throw anyone under the bus to the boss to make themselves look better. I think it's probably the one guy I worked with at my first job that was like that, but also a massive brown noser when the owner would walk in. And also a Christian who was constantly trying to convert everyone around him while also cheating on his wife and multiple other unchristian-like activities. Story 18. Let's call her June. June has been at the place I newly started for 27 years already. She was closing on 55 years old at that point. Well, June seems super sweet and professional at first. We chat, we get to know each other, all is going great. She was CDP at that point, and I got hired at the same position, but got promoted very quickly to RM. The more I did services with June, the more I noticed tension between her and everyone. She would care about everyone else working with her, even me, even our head chef, even our executive chef. No one would do the job correctly. Everyone would mess her station. Some people were taking longer breaks than they were supposed to. We were asking too much of her. We were not helping her correctly, etc. You get the gist of it. She was also a pro at starting rumors about people, talking behind people's backs, arguing, and if we would try to touch the recipes or ingredients she loved using, we were in for a tantrum followed by a vendetta. I am pretty sure she was the sole reason 2 of our chefs and 1 CDP were fired, because they tried to change too many things for her and wouldn't let her behave and have things her way. June was a very good friend with the restaurant director. Rumors has it that they were sleeping together too, so she was protected from getting fired. She liked me a lot because I was a woman. She was also sexist, and I would leave her handle her craps on her own, but she also pushed me when a new chef got in that didn't like me. So to get friend with him, at least she was efficient, but I've never had to deal with someone that toxic in and out. Story 19. She apparently had a mental handicap unbeknownst to me when I got transferred back to this location as an assistant manager. She barely followed directions. If I told her to make ham and cheese croissants, she wouldn't make them if there were no croissants baked for her. But if I told her to bake croissants, she would do it no problem. If we were out of an ingredient, instead of skipping making the sandwich, she would make it without the missing item and not tell you. She thought everyone in the group chat was someone else, and despite many attempts to communicate who's who, she would ignore it. Randomly texting hee or random emojis at like 2 a.m. waking me from a dead sleep. She couldn't be on bar to handle customers since she couldn't comprehend how to steam milk without someone holding her hand. She had no capacity to care for customers either, not understanding drink recipes or how to take an order. I had to fire her for time card fraud because she lied to several members of staff to try and scam hours. When we tried to explain what she did wrong, she would not let me speak and kept cutting me off. She threw the sim under the bus when we have valid proof she did not have permission from anyone to come and work. It was a mess, and she refused to be fired, claiming she didn't do anything wrong. It was a ducking disaster, and the icing on the cake was her mom called the store like 2 hours later, not understanding why she got fired. Then I found out she has a mental handicap when her mom explained everything. I was angry this wasn't communicated to me, but relieved she was gone and would stop waking me up at 7 a.m. on Saturdays when it's my day off. Story 20. The one that sticks out to me is the guy we hired as a stalker. After having him put away a few pallets with another guy, he started doing it alone. Every single day, he'd start putting it all away one by one. One of us would have to suggest to use a cart, and he'd put one item on the cart and wheel it all the way to the storeroom. Every single day, we'd have to teach him that you can put the whole pallet on the cart and wheel it over. Super odd, because he was a halfway normal guy aside from that. Had issues with boundaries, but that's not uncommon. He didn't do substances or anything either. Just odd. Story 21. Chef once hired a crackhead drifter off the beach. Dude was like a mafia movie stereotype, Italian-American, except scummy as hell. Pretty sure Chef smoked with him and felt bad for his situation. Either way, the dude was trash. He showed up for his first shift insisting he knew our menu and started making orders without being asked. Rushed and with the totally wrong ingredients. After some talking to, he settled down for the lunch rush. Talking trash the entire time, like where he worked in Florida was way better. Would not stop flirting with waitresses in a belligerent and grotesque way. Chef talked to him at the end of lunch about expectations. Came back the next day, messed up on something. Immediately started hitting on waitresses. Grabbed one's ass and tried to kiss her. Turned out to be the owner's niece. Got told to leave by security. Hard. He came back after hours and was talking crap to the chef and at the same time asking for rock. Chef told him where the actual local addict house was. And the password. There were 2 passwords apparently. He got the wrong one. Never saw or heard about the dude again. Story 22. This started working and the kitchen manager started to favor him over everyone else. And at first he did really well. Then after a few weeks, it seemed like every shift there was an emergency that took him out of the kitchen for a few hours while still on the clock like locking his keys in his car, splashing boiling water in his eye because of his own recklessness, and overall very unreliable. Then he started to be in such a hurry and so reckless that he completely messed up multiple dishes over the span of like 15 minutes for a week. Not to mention how he'd give someone 3x the portion for an order, resulting in waste, loss of money, and the dish looking like crap. It got to the point that in one of our meetings, our boss talked about portion and how we needed to improve, specifically aimed at him. And while she was saying that he was in the kitchen making a pizza with enough toppings for 3. Later, he told me he knew that part of the meeting wasn't meant for him because he knows he does dishes right. He later got fired because me and 4 of my coworkers went to my boss and said that we couldn't take it anymore. What the manager had already seen along with him, yelling at girls to wipe a table. He got dirty, breaking plates and dropping 2 pans of lasagna that took an hour to cook in the middle of a rush. Story 23, my current chef. Don't get me wrong, dude is fine enough, but his addiction causes so many problems in the kitchen. He's a full-time crackhead, relies on our cook for supply, and makes it everyone's problem when he can't get what he wants. He owes the cook hundreds of dollars in substances money, but gets aggressive and confrontational when she won't get him more. In everything, it's his way or the highway, to the point he was having a full argument with the owner of the business, also a capable chef, after he was told that he wasn't needed for a 3-hour Sunday shift because we only had 2 bookings. Short of that, he's a condescending and patronizing piece of crap who is nasty and demanding of all the servers. He thinks he's the only one that has a right to be tired because, and I quote, he works full-time and has a pregnant wife and housework. Oh, boo-hoo. You have to do real adult things outside of working and not getting crack. I have severe chronic pain and study full-time, but still show up to every shift I'm rostered for and just do my job. Apparently, that isn't enough, and I need to be taking on extra hours over my final semester of study, as well as taking on all his prep work that should be done while we're quiet and he comes in early on weekdays. Boss has had it up to here with him, especially after the attitude he was given over the weekend, and I suspect that he doesn't have long left in our kitchen. Thank God. Story 24. Worked with a lot of real winners. Met heads who NCNS and then show up asking for their paycheck, and addict who have straight up stolen equipment are the first ones who come to mind. But the worst coworker I ever had wasn't any of them. Everybody hated him. He'd constantly show up drunk to work and rub everyone the wrong way. He'd trap women in the walk-in and make them cry. We think he stole some alcohol, but nothing was concretely proven. He was an absolute nightmare. Story 25. I've been waiting for this one. Had a coworker who lasted far longer than he had any right to. A list of what he did in no particular order. Took hours to clean 3 fryers, something the rest of us could do in 30 minutes. Poured spent oil directly down a compartment's sink drain because he thought the pipes funneled down into the grease trap in the basement. Constantly watched the live security camera footage he had set up in his living room that displayed nothing but a feed of what his girlfriend was doing at the moment. He implied this was because she had cheated on him. Didn't make it less uncomfortable. Would occasionally walk off the line to go do whatever assortment of things that took him twice as long as anyone else. Spent a little too long in the employee bathroom and came back a little out of it. Handed out a bunch of those crafty as-seen-on-TV copper knives to everyone. Nothing wrong with this. It was just stupid to buy so many. When cleaning fryers, got about as much oil in the stock pots we used to hold the oil as he did on the floor. Story 26. A guy at my job got hired around a year and a half ago. I was freshly 18F, mind you. He is very odd, but it's a kitchen. And I was used to characters, but he would talk to himself in the dish pit and tell people how the universe was his girlfriend and he was celibate, then motioned me to come talk to him and asked me why I don't like him when I told him I don't dislike him. He then took that as I like him and asked why I was talking to other guys, the guy being my boyfriend who also worked there. He then started violently staring at me all the time, on top of intentionally closing out dish slow as hell because I'm pretty sure he was homeless. Which I felt bad about then until he got creepy and claimed all the girls there wanted him. But it doesn't even stop there. I walked back to the dish pit once, and he's literally on his knees to forgive him. Oh yeah, and also asked our kitchen manager 3 to 4 times to call an ambulance because he was having a heart attack from drinking a Bang energy drink, so a gurney was rolled into the front doors with a line of customers and he was rolled out. It was humiliating as an employee there. Needless to say, his position was short-lived. Story 27. No one specific stands out. There's always at least one in every kitchen. The traits are always consistent, refuses to do their prep, or does the bare minimum. Lives on the loading dock out back with a cigarette glued to their fingers, phone glued into their hands when they're inside, always late and always trying to leave early, but complains they don't get hours. One rather dim young man actually showed up late so often, they changed his in time on the schedule. He was super excited to tell me how he thought he'd been arriving late, but turns out he was right on time all along. Face-palmed, really hard at that one, always having to clean after them. Despite the above, They constantly complain about how hard they work and how no one else works as hard as they do. In all but the most recent job, my ex would expect everyone else to pick up the slack and moan about teamwork and family, even the best ones that I loved working for. I'm really digging working a country club kitchen because the ex and Sue are very anal about standards, and while they aren't micromanagers, they are very quick to resolve prep/performance issues. I feel like not having to sweat about prep has allowed me to push my own limits professionally. It's weird actually being excited about work. Story 28. This just happened like a week ago, but I have a line cook who is like a bull in a china shop. Drops everything like spatulas, bowls, dishes. He moves incredibly fast, but not in a good way. We were busy one night, had 2 8-tops back to back. This mother duct was picking up burgers with tongs and breaking them in half to check temps. To which I was like, oh hell nah. I'm the Seuss, I should add. Chef was off that day. So I said, don't do that to him, replied yes chef. Then I noticed the Ceylon set wasn't dropped, so I told him to drop it since the salmon was finished cooking. He didn't move. So I said it again. He blew up saying, I don't need you bossing me around and talking about how I'm a crafty line cook. I could work circles around this guy. He kept saying he could do thus alone. So the last 8-top was our last ticket, so I'm said, okay, Ducker, have at it. It took 40 minutes to out. GM was mad, head chef, and GM told me I did the right thing, but still didn't look good to the costumer. After failing at exciting the 8-top, which was 8 burgers and a pasta dish, he apologized to me. Funniest crap ever. He still works here though. Story 29. Worked at this place up in AK for a summer. They had this guy working there. That was just a disgusting mess. Cross-contamination all over the place. I don't even know where to begin. The back prep area had 2 metal tables. I was the baker and kept my table clean and would have to share the back area, very small, with kitchen prep. People would portion out burgers on the other table, among other prep. Some people would be clean and efficient. Not this guy. He would be flinging meat all over. One time he needed to walk around for whatever reason and proceeded to stabilize himself with his dirty meat-gloved hand along the way with every step. Just touching clean surfaces, spreading raw meat filth as he went. Saw him sneeze openly in the prep area. Saw him eating over a salad he was prepping. So many things that just made me cringe to my core. I finally got him fired. I'm not good with confrontation, but of course you can't just let crap like that slide. The scary part is he was the head chef of another place in town for 2 seasons prior to working there. Seasonal jobs can be quite the crap show. This was just one guy out of many at that place. Story 30. I was AKM at a place and I was in charge of scheduling and other kitchen duties. I would schedule the KM for some closing shifts and he would come in for 2 hours and leave at 7 p.m. I ended up staying most days so other people wouldn't get stuck doing his portion of work. He also would go straight to pit and would go completely silent and would send protein without calling when it was fired, flipped, or finished. I would have multiple steaks at the pass with no sides. I wasn't even calling to fire steaks. He would just do it. I would constantly argue with him and so would other cooks. He was unable to run any station besides pit. He always ducked up our Cisco and Reinhardt orders. He never filled out the kitchen checklists I made. I started to feel like he lied on his application, and at this point, he was stealing time and wages. I spoke with the owner many times and kept being told it would be handled. Months went by and I finally snapped. I walked out and made a scene. Not intentional, but one of our cooks recently overdosed and he was a close friend of mine. I was at a breaking point. I never went back and that dude no longer cooks in this town. Thank God. Story 31. Just tonight I had 2 crafty coworkers. One was a dishy and whatever. You're allowed to be terrible when you're new and a dishy. Why do you not have the capacity to tell if something is clean? Why do you snap at me to make desserts when it's your job and all you're doing is chatting on the ducking phone? Why is your phone out to begin with? Other guys training on Sue's, which is my regular position. I'm working salad fry station. Excuse me, sir. I can't just disappear to the back whenever I feel like vaping in the walk-in. I wouldn't have a job if I did that. But because you're the cousin of some line cook, I guess that means it's okay? Get the duck back here and stop making me do salad, Sue, and fry. Probably not the worst coworkers, but I needed to vent. They did just fire a dishy lately because he yelled at me for saying he couldn't go home early and got low-key physical over it. I just stood there laughing the whole time. At least I know my boss has got my back. For the record, I have to single-handedly open 3 stations and do all the side work for them, and clean the fryers and check in a delivery since our normal prep guy took off, so I was very spread thin today. Story 32. I worked with a guy. No skills but massive ego. Zero humility. He was always coming late for shifts, doing substances, before, after, and during work. Sometimes drunk during shift. Lived in staff accommodation together with other chefs and waitresses and tried to hit on one girl. Got refused and didn't like it. While high and drunk, smashed her door and abused her. HR said that they are not to be accounted for things happening at accommodation premises. The company did not fire him as the place was quite newly opened, 1,005 to 2 years after opening, in the middle of British nothing, near impossible to find Japanese cuisine chefs. Also got protected by an absolute douche Japanese head chef with whom he was going to parties and took substances with him. Made his life literal hell. Started destroying his psyche and proved him not a prodigy he thought to be, throughout 3 months until he quit. Later, the head chef quit to open his omakase restaurant in London. He got a job there. Didn't last long in a smaller team with no one to cover for him. Now I have no idea what and where he does. I hope not to meet him again. His food tasted somewhat good, but without wow. It looked like crap. Story 33. We had a 40-year-old man-child. One known asked me to taste a sauce one time and I said it's good, but might need a little salt. He started screaming at me, telling me if I thought I could do better, why don't I make it instead? I told him if he didn't want my option, why ask me? And then I asked him if he thought it needed more salt. He tasted again and said it could use more salt. 2. He told an old guy at work he was going to start prep on a particular meal, and the old guy said he already did it. 40-year-old starts pouting. Why am I even here? Maybe I'll just go home. That has become a running joke. Whenever someone says they completed a task, fine, I'll just go home. What am I even doing here? 3. He also screamed at a sweet 70-year-old lady that runs our register. I calmly explained to him he can't talk to her that way, and how would he feel if someone screamed at his mother or grandmother that way? He proceeded to challenge me to a fight outside. Dozens of other stories like these. He was his own worst enemy. Story 34. Worked with extreme, overt narcissist who probably has violent tendencies. Now I'm one of those veterans that everyone gets along with and looks up to. This guy hated my guts and made it an everyday mission to try to call me out for any minor mistake, push my buttons, and outright threaten me, but it's all in good fun. I had to walk on eggshells daily while pretending it doesn't affect me as to not make myself a target. He's a much bigger dude and looks mean AF. He also does the whole silent treatment BS and will randomly blow up out of nowhere or crack some joke in the middle. His presence is jarring, to say the least. He said something to one of the girls one day, and she blew the duck up on him, screaming. Even tried picking a fight with a lower manager and got away with it. We couldn't afford to fire anyone, is my guess. I honestly thought I was on my last legs after almost 20 years because of this idiot. Maybe a prayer was answered on one fateful day our store had to close indefinitely. My biggest relief wasn't that I was free from that job, but maybe actually free from working around this dude. Story 35. Owner hired a guy with some okay experience from an Applebee's. He does all right his first day. His second day, him and I are working alone for the last hour of the night. He and I are shooting the crap, and he asked if we ever play with the knives. I didn't know what he meant by that, and was starting to tell him, you better play with your own, when he proudly proclaimed he was really good at tossing his up in the air and catching it. I kind of smiled and shrugged it off. Fast forward to him finishing up closing our prep area while I am closing the grill. He rushes in, hand gushing blood everywhere. No towel. On the floor. He held it over a table at one point till I got him a trash can and a towel. I go to find him a ride from a server or the owner. As we are waiting for his ride to clock out, I asked him how he did it and he looked down at the ground. He was playing with the knives. He got fired the next day. Story 36. Worked in a prep kitchen at a bagel place, one of my favorite jobs I've ever had, but my manager was just awful. Basically an incel before that was really a thing. Super neckbeardy. He hired me because he thought I was cute and proceeded to try flirting with me for the first few months. When I repeatedly made it clear that I was happily in a relationship, he became pouty for a few weeks, then just started treating me like crap. He would lecture us all shift about whatever he wanted to talk about, nitpick meaningless bullcrap, commandeered the music every single day, almost made me hate Neutral Milk Hotel, that ducker. Was very vocal about how he was in love with one of my coworkers, and she friend zoned him. Did I know his dad was a famous artist in the 70s? I could go on. I ended up moving out of town before I could switch to dough and baking, but I was on my way out of that kitchen fast because of this guy. Every single other thing about the job was wonderful though, and he would either leave early, staggered shifts, or I would work with the AKM, which was great. Story 37. Sous chef when I started at my I got moved around within a restaurant group to a finer dining establishment to help them out. When I started there, the sous chef and I knew each other from a life before. I used to run security for a friend, and he was a good customer to said friend. He was one of those textbook cooks who thought he was the best around, but would melt every dinner service. Found out he'd been drinking the wine, smoking in the walk-in, and doing substances in the bathroom. It's obvious this impairment was what stopped him from being able to do his job. It came to a tipping point when, in a slur of words, he blamed me for his shortcoming. We had to stay separated after that. I told him I'd waterboard his ass with fryer oil. They got wise and offered him rehab. He told them he didn't need it, he didn't have a problem, and quit. When he left, he stole my knife hitch, was a gift from a past GM. Now he does the job I did when I was 18 for much less pay. Then, he he was making. Pathetic story 38. I started a new job as the CDC at a little French bistro that needed a ton of help. The two sous chefs had both been there for 3+ years and were both a huge part of the problem. One was worse than the other, though. He was a short, sticky 50-year-old Italian guy who was lazy, sloppy, wouldn't take constructive criticism, and had a really bad habit of clocking off for a 30-minute break whenever we got busy. I couldn't discipline him because the owner, who was an idiot and had no prior restaurant experience before opening one, had a soft spot for him and thought he was a really good cook. I was pretty frustrated the first week, and when my second week, I decided to change my approach, and instead of acting like his boss, I would try to get to know him better on a personal level. Turns out, he was the uncle of one of my best friends from high school. His sister, my friend's mom, used to buy us beer and let us party at her house. After we figured that out, he completely changed his tune and became my biggest ally there. Story 39. Probably tame in comparison to some of you all, but I worked with a line cook, so not even a sous, who was an absolute towards everyone. The only person this person wasn't A2 was the head chef. The person bullied everyone and put everyone down, including putting down the sous chefs, more senior. No one wanted to work with this person because they did it to everyone. Made 3 people cry. I reported the person and the person retaliated and started giving me the worst jobs to do. Refused to do it and told everyone else to make me do the worst jobs. Even though the person was also just a line cook, everyone was scared of them based on the way the person bullies everyone. The person racked up many complaints. We also had an 18-year-old girl who started working with us as an apprentice, and on the second month, the girl's mother made a complaint because she went home crying to her mother because of this person. I ended up getting an injury at work because this person told all the line cooks to not help me after I reported them to HR. Story 40. Worked at a slow BBQ bar. Had a smoker, I loved it. Usually just 1 cook on or 2 for a few hours over dinner. When I got there, they had just installed a security door and a camera by the beer dry storage because they were out like 30 beers a week. I had heard one of the cooks had been drinking at work before I'd arrived. Every few months we would come up with a new dessert special, and it was currently a bourbon peach cobbler. Probably made one every couple days. One day I was at the bar after my shift for a few hours, and eventually the bartender asks how many cobblers we were making. Huh? I think she's making one today. Bartender. She's asked me for 5 OZ bourbon like 5 times now? She was smashed falling down the small staircase, wobbling around. One time I sent her home because she was hammered and using a knife in a small kitchen, and I feared for my life, LMAO. She would thaw stuff in 1/2 dish sinks under warm water with the second being used for dishes. Just a nightmare. She was fun though. Story 41. When I was working at Chipotle, there was this girl who I could not stand. Her BF as a manager, so she had an attitude and thought she could get away with anything. One time I was running Expo and she was on cash. She charged an order wrong and openly blamed me, saying I didn't tell her. It was a secret menu item, so we didn't have a set label to write on the food. My GM was standing right behind us, and he heard me say it and shut her down immediately. Maybe 5 minutes later, she gives someone the wrong order, blames me again. GM backs me up again. Another time she was supposed to close dishes and I closed the line. She really didn't want to close dishes, and as I'm speaking with customers, starts begging me to take dishes. I said no, mostly because I had closed dish a bunch recently, but I also needed to get home ASAP and dish takes longer to close. I also didn't have a very efficient system in place. After the 3rd time, I just ignored her and kept handling the guest's order. Story 42. When I was a super shy and young hostess, one of the servers had it out for me just because I was shy. One day in the employee cafeteria, she started yelling about me from across several tables in front of others about how I don't talk over and over again. No idea what she was trying to accomplish doing that, but it was a bad experience and I avoided her completely after her flipping out for a crappy reason. I had a lead who constantly yelled at me to leave when I would wait for my guest's food, not even waiting long or bullcrafting around the area at all. I have anxiety, and she made it 100x worse by humiliating me in front of my coworkers almost every morning. And another brown-noser coworker who pretended very hard to be my friend, only to tell my coworkers and acquaintances about my personal life regularly. She did it to a lot of other women, so I should have been less naive. She was super friendly in a fake way, and I regret not trusting my gut instinct her. Story 43. We had one woman come on who butted heads with everyone. She would not take any instructions from anyone who wasn't her supervisor, and then even ignored them most of the time. By a month in, she had an incident report with every other person on the line besides me. I knew we were going to butt heads eventuality, so I tried to wait for something that was objectively wrong and could get someone hurt, which came up when she left knives in the sink. I braced myself, gathered my courage, and went, "Hey, don't leave knives in the sink." 5 minutes later, she came over and blew up on me about how I can't talk to her so disrespectfully and only her manager can tell her what to do. Things didn't come to blows, which is better than some of the other fights she had. I had a reputation for being chill, and she got fired not long after that, so I'd like to think I played a part. I've had coworkers who were more toxic, but at least they were competent. Story 44. This prep cook. She was a year younger than me, and we were both pretty young. She was just plain and simple. A Karen. Took issue with everything and everyone. Said she was held to different standards than everybody else, which simply wasn't true. You asked her to do dishes, she's Karen. Ask her to make a new sliced pie, she'd Karen. We sent her to prep because she was toxic during the rush, and that was okay for a bit. But then she would call dibs on half the prep list right when she walked in, and then often wouldn't finish her dibs. We didn't know this until after she was let go, but she was stealing bags of ham and chicken. She also spit on my opening manager's coat backpack on the day she was let go. She tried to sue my boss for retaliation as well. She had a lot of personal issues, including a pause boyfriend, but it wasn't an excuse. There's so much more honestly, but duck that Karen. Story 45. I once worked with a chef who would sleep with any woman he could. I know that barely narrows it down, but one of them became obsessed and lived nearby. For years, she came in 1-2 times a week to see if he was there, and fight Fo to go into the kitchen, or any other woman she suspected was there to see him. Fo had a routine standard secret warning for him when she would show up, but at the mere mention of her presence, he would ditch for like 15, 20 or more men, or until the coast was declared clear by Fo H. So it was like, Fo, fight her off, or lose our head chef for an indeterminate amount of time, she would linger, no matter how busy it was. He said she was the reason he believed in witchcraft and that she did something awful to his pee-pee. I'll never forget you, Arnie. Story 46. I worked at a fast food place for a while. When I started, there was this older guy who had worked at said fast food chain for 30 years. He would constantly hit on women that came in, was rude to customers, and was overall kind of creepy. He would lie about crap and would flirt with me. I hung out with him one time after work, and he told everyone on shift that I was hitting on him and that I had a crush on him. He was like 20 years older than me, and bald, and fat. He also told me he lost someone one time. We had a new hire who was neon and obviously gay, and he made the new hire so uncomfortable that he refused to work with him. He finally quit during the middle of a lunch rush when he was working with my manager. My manager told him to stop being rude to customers, and he just yelled at her and walked out. Story 47. We had a general manager of our hotel, our restaurant, bar, banquet, restaurant that was a complete a-hole. His main worry was to get his quarterly bonus for each department's targets. So, near the deadline, he would ride hard whatever department to meet labor, food, or housekeeping targets. We never saw a penny. He wrote up, fired, and made life miserable for anyone that refused to put in extra hours for free if it was your department. Our head of housekeeping of 26 years was so stressed out, she got very sick and her cancer came back again. Eventually, he hit her from the stress. I quit, got a dream job that I just loved, and everyone loved my efforts. This a-hole was made regional manager. Then our hotel got bought out by the same management company he worked for. 3 months later, we got a new GM that was his buddy, pulling the same crap. I got write-ups for petty bullcrap. I quit again and got out of the hospitality biz. Story 48. I've had a handful of people that I've trained and would just not want to learn beyond a certain point. I don't mind making prep lists and explaining how to do a task to someone, but not after having them work there for 2+ months. I shouldn't have to tell you to put water on potatoes after you peel or cut them. I shouldn't have to tell you to fill the table full of bread or tortillas every time you make sandwiches for the lunch buffet, rather than making one at a time. It's annoying to have to tell someone how to do a thing every time they do it, even months since they've been hired on. It would literally be easier to do it all myself, but it's just not realistic time-wise. I really treasure those that soak in the information and retain it. It's a real passion killer to work with people who genuinely don't care about anything, refuse to learn or retain any information. Story 49. Had a dude start with us. Maybe mid-40s, some sort of Hispanic origin. Slow, messy, braggart. Told me I couldn't store cold-portioned raw broccoli in the box it came in because it will cook in there. Drove a busted-up 1980s Mercedes and insisted that he had a Ferrari and Lamborghini at his house. After complaining about being busy all night while he thought no one was watching, I saw him deliberately pull a plating board onto his knee and start screaming and limping around saying he needed to go to the hospital. The board barely touched him with no force. Claimed he fell in the walking and went home mid-service on a busy night. Eventually, my head chef fired him. The guy tried to sue for injuries and anything he could. Funny thing, when you start a lawsuit, identities get exposed. Turns out, this dude was using his nephew's SN and trying to work a sort of insurance scam. He got himself deported. Story 50. Trevor. Real name because damn him. He was the KA's at a small but popular family-owned place. The owners loved him like a son. They were holes, too. Whenever inconvenienced or irritated, he would lash out by throwing knives across the kitchen or slamming blazing hot sauté pans on the counter, often burning the person standing next to him on the line. He also enjoyed terrorizing the village by pressing the entire row of pagers just because and leaving scalding hot items in the dish pit without warning anyone. When I brought this up to the owners, I was told I needed to learn to get along with everyone since I was the newbie. He burned me twice and nearly impaled me 3 times. I put up with that abuse for 7 months. It was my shortest stint in any kitchen and the only job I have ever left without notice. Story 51. The guy that applied for a server position that upper management thought was clever to have them work boy. This guy was a sociopath, no filter, and thought he was smarter than everyone. If a new boy hire came in to try out, he would get super anxious and think he is being replaced. He was fired at every job he has ever had. He told me this for some reason. With the worst being at a car dealership where he applied a discount on paper, but never told the customer and pocketed the money. He tried entrapping head chef with his phone in his chef jacket pocket, recording as he tried to get head chef to freak out. No other employee took up my mental energy after work than this ducking nut. The bipolar, schizophrenic, multiple personality guy that followed was way less of a mental hassle. Story 52. I don't know if it's being in a good place mentally, thinking back to coworkers and thinking they weren't that bad. Or maybe it's just hard to pick one. I worked for a guy who made a chicken soup with just chicken booster, really cheap powdered stock, water, and egg whites. He was notoriously lazy, but it was kind of good because he would ask you to cover his shifts before he went on holidays so he could have a little extra break. It was always fun coming in, and the other guy he owned the business with questioning you how much cash you got paid to work your day off for him. Or the addict who tried to punch on with another chef because he didn't like that he had the whole Alanis Morissette Jagged Little Pill album on his iTunes. Album is pretty fire. Story 53. I worked with a guy who was last redneck status. Most of what he ate was deer and whatever else he hunted. He sweat so bad in the warehouse we worked at, you could smell the meat spewing out. This man would sweat through his shirt by 10 a.m. He never drank water, only soda. So here comes the weird crap. He used to brag about ducking sheep by putting on knee-high water boots and putting the sheep's back legs in the boots so they couldn't run away. Like full-on brag, like it was cool. That's just one of many things he said. And I know he was serious. He was really awful and eventually was fired and sued by another employee. That was about 10 years ago and it was by far the worst person I've ever worked with or met. Story 54. Older guy. I got hired on as his chef and immediately knew he wasn't going to listen to a damn thing I said. He had connections with the owners and GM. They were all buddies, all boomers. It was hell. None of them had any prior experience like mine and undermined everything I tried to change. They hired me on saying they had a bad system. They wanted to update their menu. They were essentially lost and unwilling to change. Sad, depressing old people food. Processed ingredients, no joke, 1 block away from our city's food market. Most of my kitchen experiences have been dog crap. It's truly just a crafty industry to work in though. GTFO if you can. Story 55. Went through a constant hire fire period for a couple months straight. Couple favorites were woman who claimed to work at Red Robin but didn't know how to cook more than 1 order at a time. Also, let her tail grow bigger through the night instead of hanging tickets. Guy who couldn't read despite being given a cheat sheet with every recipe. Also was allergic to gluten and didn't know that biscuit dough and gravy were, wait for it, made out of flour. Lady who couldn't retain any recipes, couldn't finish her work as a dishie, and always tried to bum rides or smokes from everyone. Last couple of dudes we hired were mostly fine, but always called out every weekend. Story 56. This was back when I worked at a bakery, but still think it fits here. It was a small location, just the baker herself. She didn't own it or anything, just head baker. And myself, sandwich shop in the same building as us, separate business. It was my first job out of high school, and it's been over 10 years since then. But looking back now, I could tell she felt really threatened by me. All this just to say, besides all the extra hell she gave me, at one point, she was complaining I was using too many gloves. In a bakery, too many gloves, and that I should just use water to rinse my gloves off and reuse them for the next task. I wish I was making this up. Shout out to you, Allison. Don't miss you. Story 57. Had a recent CIA grad come through and make a show of handing out these little recipe notebooks to everyone on the line. Seemed like a nice gesture until he goes, "It really seems like you guys all could benefit from reading up on these." This was a high-end hotel with multiple dining rooms, and he could barely handle Garmo Station with 2 people to hold his hand. We pulled mats at the end of the night to clean, and he made sure to flick his and shoot floor debris all over me and me clean station, laugh, and say ops. I told Chef if he was back on the line tomorrow, he'd need a new person to run grill. 2 days later, he was gone. Story 58, the newest hire. She has no common sense, has made up an entire order because she couldn't understand what the customer was saying, Just stands there waiting to be told what to do when there's 8 tickets up and a DoorDash order waiting to be filled. I can't believe she's managed to last as long as she has, and I can't believe my boss is making me train her. I also can't believe he didn't listen to everyone's complaints about her. Second worst is this one who constantly complains whenever she works the shift after me. Let's completely ignore that I have to babysit said new hire and field customers yelling at me for an hour on the phone, or the fact that my boss won't fix half the crap wrong in the shop. It's all somehow my fault. Hell world. Story 59. Worked with a Met head for 14 years. I was already established in the place for 2 years before he started. He was able to polish off a bottle of well vodka through one shift every single day at work. Yet he was never drunk. I posted the one about the ribeyes being cut so badly by him. His hands would turn the meat green the next day. I stayed because I made so much cash tips per week that it was hard to find something else to replace that kind of income. Biggest pause I've ever met in my life. Scary thing was that he was 2 months younger than me. I've never witnessed anything of that nature by any human being, as long as I've been alive in over 50 years. If he died, I wouldn't care. Story 60. The first place I trained at, this line cook with a huge ego, the kind that's too good for this place but never leaves, instantly hated my guts. When he eventually figured out that I am gay and started hitting me in the center of my back whenever he walked past and pretended that he was greeting me 20 to 30 times a day, he spent prep time mooching on anything he could eat raw. He would regularly grab handfuls of whatever was on my board and just stare at me while eating it. 2 months after I started, a guy in a suit showed up with a briefcase and everyone had to sign that they consent to a polygraph test because of suspected theft. He was the only one tested and we never saw him again. Story 61. Big lazy fat man. Used to ask people to get crap for him even if he was closest to it. Saw him throw kitchen cloths into the bin because he couldn't be bothered waddling over to the laundry basket. Used to just throw his rubbish into the floor even though there was a bin right next to him. Smelled awful. Didn't wash his body or his clothes. Smelled like he slept in what he wore to work as well. He asked me to make him a dessert pizza once, even though he was perfectly capable of making it himself, so I made him sit in the corner and eat it like that fat kid in Matilda. I quit that job because I couldn't stand working with him. Story 62. Some Colombia's dude who thought his crap didn't stink tried to bully me constantly by doing little things like running into me with his shoulder. I had enough at some point and started planting myself and turning my shoulder slightly and absolutely nailing him. He cut that out pretty quick. He was combative and rude and constantly made comments that I was lazy and unorganized and that he worked much harder than me. The boss told him if he didn't cut it out, he would be let go, and it was pretty satisfying hearing that he was crying about it. His attitude obviously didn't pick up, and I got the satisfaction of firing his little gremlin ass. He was constantly demanding respect, and he was one of the most disrespectful I've ever worked with. Story 63. Lazy guy that had been there forever. He trained me on the simple line for about 2 days before I got a handle on the other things he did. Before I started doing that stuff, along with all the prep I normally did. One time he told me to stop cleaning something because it will just get dirty again. One day while he was doing his usual moping around, he came around the corner and criticized some minor thing on my prep, and I just stared at him and said, "Dude, ducking do something." He never tried to give me another command, and he was fired shortly later. Story 64. We had a really dirty guy in our kitchen that went across the street to another bar for extra hours. Lots of our crew got our shifters there, so we got feedback from the other staff about how he was doing. The bartender was lamenting to me one night that she had put out several emails about hygiene with little success. Right at that moment, we both looked over at the cook putting a song on the jukebox. He reached up and popped a giant boil on his neck and then ate it. The bartender dry heaved. Story 60. New head chef hired by the alcoholic. Absentee owner after he drove away the previous chef who was a rock star sweetheart. New chef didn't like the existing menu, so he'd create new and improved dishes in the middle of service that were nothing like the menu description, and proceed to scream at us servers to take our pulled pork pasta dishes in lieu of the shrimp flatbread we rang in, no joke, and then refused to make it the listed menu way. Loved going back to those tables trying to explain that the new chef was high as hell and refusing to make their order. So how would they feel about beef ravioli instead of citrus mahi-mahi? I lasted exactly 4 shifts after his arrival. Story 66. I honestly just quit a restaurant. I had only worked at maybe 2 weeks tops and immediately went to another one because of a 62-year-old pastry chef from Chicago. I was hired for prep because she was either on thwack or just so scrambled she couldn't do prep. She was really good at delegating things to other people, not good at actually doing herself. Super extra, super annoying to work with. She never stiff-hued trying to be my friend. She grabbed my personal chef knife and get sexed on a metal honing rod to sharpen it. I have never wanted to punch an old lady until that day. I found another job because I swore she was trying to duck my crap up. So toxic. Story 67. Nothing all that crazy, but got back into the industry working at a seasonal place halfway across the country from where I live. This one guy is a complete narcissist. Great cook for sure, but is a crafty person in general. Compliments are always underhanded, veiled insults. Makes sure he's always got the last comment in any joke or conversation, even though it has nothing to do with him. For some reason, he has to be in everyone's way, like in my station on the line, while doing his own crap. Just an all-around annoying piece of crap. Definitely not as bad as every other comment here, but I hate this guy with every fiber of my being. Story 68. I worked at a chain donut shop with a bunch of other employees, and one of them had been working there for over 20 years. She was hostile and cranky with everyone but the customers and management. One day I had to work side by side with her, and she was really aggressively hostile with me. I called her out on it, and she said something about her behavior being better than putting bruises on me. After a WTF moment, I went to management to tell them that I was done ever working with her and why. She lasted longer than I did there. I've worked at a lot of different places, but never with anyone that terrible. Story 69. Does a former cook while working for a tire company count? I looked at the reviews like, manager sounds like a chef, and sure enough, he probably got bullied out of his job for being awful. And he's textbook abusive. By the letter, he also didn't realize that object permanence issues are because of his ADHD, and he'd executive dysfunction. While we twiddled our thumbs for 3 hours and make us rush to finish cars that have been out there all day, he also had a lot of friends with SUVs that he hooked up because he wasn't lifting the tires with 22-inch rims. Story 70. A coworker, F, a bit older than me, 35 to 38. She reacted to every insignificant thing by throwing a tantrum, and if she couldn't find any problems, she would invent them out of nowhere. Not a single working day was spared from her sadistic behavior. She did this only with new employees, unless the new employee was similar in nature to her. For example, her, "You're doing it all wrong," while I was packing sweets, cupcakes, etc. for vending machines. Me, "What's wrong with this?" Her, "I don't know." Leaves when I didn't know how to cut the salad correctly, put the servings in the wrong pan, did the dishes completely wrong. The list goes on and on. Sometimes I was even blamed for other people's mistakes. Story 71. Bro, I had a coworker named Mary that did next to nothing and stunk like cat piss. One time I was taking someone's order on the phone, and she was making someone's sub, and the person on the phone was going on, and after about 7 minutes, there's a gigantic ducking line, and Mary asks me if I can get the register as I am on the phone. Another time I was smoking weed after my shift, was waiting for my brother to pick me up, as I didn't have a car at the time, and she came out and stuck her cooch in my face to block the wind. Like Karen GTFO, I can smell you. Story 72. We hired this vagrant train hopper dude from way out town. Not to diss train hoppers, but, some kitchens are professional workspaces. That aside, he was that classic gas station drunk. Did okay his first shift hungover, never saw him sober again. After 2 days, he was asleep under the restaurant at noon during Friday prep. My dish bro and I stole a waitress's happy birthday card and ripped the happy birthday clown singing when you open the card up microchip and speaker. Rigged it to repeat and left it by his lousy head. Dude was cramped up in dust on a pallet. Never heard from him again. Story 73. This stupid fat Karen from New York who would constantly use her former residence as an excuse to be rude and just plain dirty. She made it her goal to make every person there cry, and she would target and bully the most soft-spoken people. She would openly talk about her sex life. My final straw was when she posted amateur adult film on Snapchat. She was a cruel, disgusting person who wanted everyone around her to be miserable. There is absolutely nothing wrong with Nye, but there is absolutely everything wrong with using it as an excuse to be inexplicably rude and toxic towards people. Story 74. Worst coworker I had was this guy who would literally hide behind the garbage bins in the back and just talk on his phone. He barely did anything and was near impossible to find during the rush. Eventually, he lost his temper and threw one of those metal pans coated in thick black plastic at me. In the heat of it, I laughed and sprayed him with water from the dish sink. Thought it was just a playful jab, so I jabbed him back. I was wrong and he threw another one at my face. One bloody nose, I chose not to retaliate. Later, he was never seen again. Story 75. We had a guy who would torture lobsters. He did it in front of me because I was a vegetarian at the time, and he got a kick out of upsetting me. I took that crap straight to chef, and he was gone before closing. Imagine my surprise when he was hired at another restaurant I worked at a few years later. Didn't make it then because he drank his paycheck and wouldn't show up for the next few days. Story 76. Perhaps Cowboy John. He was on parole for selling substances and stopped taking his meds. He told us there was a cowboy hiding in the bushes across the street watching him. He was going to bring a gun in to use it on the cowboy. He did a good job otherwise and pulled his weight. Had some good ideas before he stopped taking his meds. It was a sad and scary situation. Our little teen dishwasher sucked, would complain about how hot the kitchen was and make the prep cook do dishes and go hide in the bathroom. So it's between Cowboy John and the lazy teen. Story 77. Tornado John, the messiest person I know. He would be making mashed potatoes and somehow him and all the restaurant would end up covered in mashed. He survived on sugar and cigarettes exclusively. So most of the time he was making a mess or out smoking. He didn't want any help because he had to prove he was capable. So often we would be behind on production and service, but he would lose his mind if he tried to help out. Story 78. She stole my wallet right out of my purse. She was being sent home after showing up to work an hour late, and when she went to go grab her purse from our little storage shelf, she went into my bag, took my wallet out, and put it into her bag, all in full view of a security camera. I contacted the police and she was ordered to pay back all the cash she stole out of my wallet. But it's been 4 to 5 years, and I've still received less than half of what she owes me. She quickly moved to a different state after this happened. Story 79. The boss who made me have a disciplinary meeting with head honchos and listed all of these things that I did wrong. Only, I didn't do any of the things and was able to prove it because I was working at my other job during every date and time, she said. They wrote me up anyway. I looked for a new job immediately, gave notice, and went on to better things. I was later offered her job by the same bosses. I declined. Story 80. Almost all of them, as of lately, have been awful. Something about the pandemic mixed with the already questionable, jeopardized industry. We already had a lot of the rejects, but something about those rejects pre-2019 felt like they were at least willing to try and work. Now I feel like everyone that comes through hates working, half-asses everything, then quits within a month. So you can't get anyone trained and ready to rock. I work on the capital square of a bigger city, so maybe that has something to do with it too. What's the worst your coworker has done to you? Story 1. Before my story, a note. I will never let anyone treat me like this again. Much older and wiser. If I spot a bully, I bail and go nowadays as soon as I experience it. And I report it to the right people before I bail. Back 25 years ago, I was working in a hospital HR department. Been there a few years. Payroll workload had literally been doubled. And for 6 months, I mentioned an obvious risk. There was way too much manual work and data entry over a few days each pay fortnight. My complaints were not taken seriously. My HR coordinator manager started some very serious bullying. I went on annual leave for a month, came back, and then the crap hit the fan. My replacement had seriously struggled with the workload and went AWOL for a whole pay run. Just disappeared. So my colleagues had to try and cover this large, complicated nursing payroll between them. My bully boss blamed me for the guy going AWOL, not coping with the workload and the mess of that pay run. I was so stressed. Stress and a workload with a lot of manual data entry is a bad health combo. No surprise. A month after I came back, I woke up with carpal tunnel. I was returned to work after a few days off, meant to be supernumerary, but that was a farce. My colleague was never there, most of the time. Their child had a health issue. So there I was, meant to be observing, not actively using a computer, and a pay run had to be done. I was trying to key copious amounts of manual data with my left hand. Keyboards aren't designed to safely do this. The coordinator was absolutely useless. No surprise, I went to my GP and demanded I was pulled out of this farce of a program after 5 nightmarish weeks. Well, I went in the next day to hand over and head home to recover. I was talking with the OSH team when my boss stormed in, interrupted, and screamed in my face about leaving bad notes on my employer file if I didn't sort everything to her satisfaction before I left. Almost spitting in my face, type shouting and screaming. She was almost psychotic in her rant. This was while I was standing next to the OSH coordinator, whose jaw was hitting the floor. I went downstairs and spent an hour reporting her behavior to the HR manager, who tried to excuse it because she's stressed. Long story short, I reported her for bullying officially. HR department tried to deny it or minimize it, tried to cover their own arses, so I lodged a 20-page official complaint direct with the CEO. The bullying had been so sustained, I could almost write a novel. I'd been documenting things for 6+ months. It was dropped to his office for his eyes only. That got immediate action. An external report confirmed they'd been sustained substantial bullying after an investigation. Helped me in my compo case. I'd developed bad RSI across both upper limbs due to this nightmare. Her bullying definitely bumped my payout. I ended up out of work 18 months, and she lost her job as a bonus. Story 2. Can I include ex-boss as a coworker? Never paid any of us super for over 12 months. And when someone noticed and flagged it, she was so embarrassed that it had happened because she cares so much about us. She then organized a team meeting and told us all that, as an apology, she was going to pay us all an extra 10% on top of what was owed to us. because that's the type of caring person she is. One of the team pointed out to her that she might actually has to pay us an extra 10% as an ATO rule, so it's a fine and not a gesture of goodwill. She claimed that was a coincidence. Narrator. In fact, the team didn't receive what super was owed to them as she decided to file for bankruptcy in Phoenix 3 months later. Story 3. My boss sent me on an errand right before an important national meeting. When I walked into the meeting, he was telling the GM that he had no idea where I was or why I was late, making it sound like I hadn't shown up for work yet. I handed out the things and then pointedly said to him, "Here's the receipt and your credit card for the things that you sent to get 10 minutes ago." He's no longer a manager. Story 4. 2 GMS ganged up on me over an insanely non-trivial issue and bullied me via email to the point I was shaking with pure rage. I was the head of engineering at a startup and was on site with our 2 fabricators, installing a water treatment system, which I had scheduled for that week, and basically my job was procurement and supply stuff, keeping the guys fed, watered, and taking the ACE builts and doing a bit of gopher work, as well as helping with the install. Sales manager, GM level, decided I needed to waste half a day driving to the other end of Melbourne to go meet a customer. We were on site at the Royal Melbourne Golf Club. Client was out past the airport, rather than doing it himself, and additionally to another client closer to North Melbourne, essentially leaving the 2 guys on site without me for half a day. They were fine as I'd made sure that everything had been sorted out prior for their food and such. Sure, fine, hey, whatever. They had also sent a jacket with me for one of our co-founders in Melbourne, who was also out at Pakenham, and expected me to just drop everything another day and drive out there to drop it off. I didn't get the time to as we were running a bit behind schedule as we had to source a couple parts that we had missed when ordering stuff. We drove back on the Saturday morning and I told them because I'd driven to and from Melbourne on my time that I'd be taking toil on the Monday and Tuesday. We unpacked the ute and left everything in the workshop. One of them found the jacket and they proceeded to call me a liar, tell me I was useless, all sorts of stuff in writing on my day off. I managed to not lose my cool, but ultimately had no power, as the sales GM was the son-in-law of the owner of the company. Story 5. Counter to that, I used to play the radio out of my speakers. After about 5 years of doing this, my team got moved to another room and we carried on. I find it helps with ADHD, that bit of extra load to stop my brain from distracting itself. One colleague complained she had a headache and could we turn it down? It was never loud, purposefully, so you could talk and banter over it. So we did, no need to be a banana about things. Later in the day, I got pulled into a meeting with my manager and the MD as I was bullying her with the music. I pointed out the only interaction we've had was she asked to turn it down, not off, because she had a headache, and I complied. I don't see how it's bullying. According to her, I turned it back up again. This is untrue, but meh. What really gets me though is her staff would come to me to complain about her bullying them. She'd give them half the information to do a job, literally yell at them for inevitably getting it wrong, which is never okay in the workplace, and not support them because she was too busy. She sat half a desk ahead of me, so I could see her screen out the corner of my eye where she'd scroll up and down the same email for half an hour, too fast to actually be reading it, or simply move the Explorer window around in a square motion. I presume she suspected there was software monitoring productivity. And this is when she was actually at her desk, not taking a 2-hour lunch or going for a 90-minute walk to clear her head. But yeah, I'm the a-hole. Story 6. I've had a couple. Worst was my boss. A new hire was making the OG admin woman miserable, bullying her and just being downright nasty. But the new hire had worked her way in to be the boss's pet. It was weird. He was happily married, but she was always flirting and batting eyelids. Easily like 15 years difference. New hire was basically a child. It was gross. Anyway, OG admin had confided in me that she had some mental health issues going on, so I tried to place myself between her and new hire all the time. Things didn't improve. So I approached the boss carefully with my concerns. I didn't give him too much info, just what I was witnessing. He thanked me. But at the very next company meeting, he stood up in front of everyone and said he had an announcement. He pointed at me and announced that I was a snake, and everyone should watch their backs around me. I would lie and cheat to make myself look better. I had really good relationships with everyone I worked with, and they all looked at me disgusted and horrified. So I found a new job within a week or two and resigned. He called me in a panic, apologizing. This wasn't my intention, regarding the incident at the meeting, I assume. Begging for answers and asking if there was anything he could do to make me stay. Sorry, what? I skipped out the door on my last day, but then found out OG admin had ended up voluntarily institutionalizing herself about a month later because the bullying got so bad, and she just wasn't in a place where she could handle it. Not that she should have to. Story 7. She accused me of having an affair or attempting to have an affair with a guy in finance that I didn't even meet in person yet. She went on for 15 whole minutes in the middle of our open plan office, saying that I was going to cheat on my boyfriend, now husband, with this man and how she can see an affair from a mile away. I told her multiple times to stop. Other colleagues intervened, but she kept escalating in the accusation. She started this accusation after I mentioned that the guy in finance opened up over Teams about his weekend and his recent breakup with his long-term girlfriend. So he's going away with his mates. The female colleague and I had been really good work friends up until this point. I told her because I found it interesting how open he was, but that was it. I don't know what she had against me. Some thought jealousy, some thought she was probably having an affair and looking to feel better about herself. It got taken to HR, but nothing really came of it. Our relationship was strained after, and she did do other things to try and spite or sabotage me. I left the company. She's still there. She tried to get our JD to sign a document that wasn't accurate, an attempt to commit fraud so she could take a shortcut. It was to do with our liquor licensing as well. The JD knew better and shamed her in the office for her request. I honestly don't know how she is still employed there. Story 8. Was good friends with this coworker until I landed a promotion before she did. She organized a series of dinners all on the same evening for people working on a big account at our company and asked me to host one of the dinners along with about 10 other separate hosts, including herself. She told us that the list of attendees for each dinner were randomized, and she was going to email out the attendees lists for each dinner on the day of the event, so it was a surprise for both hosts and attendees. She ended up putting everyone who RSVP'd no to the event at the last minute on my table on the same day as the event, and put the entirety of my project team, essentially everyone I was friendly with at the company, on her own at the nicest restaurant. I was utterly humiliated at the restaurant when only 2 people out of a huge long table booked for 21 showed up the whole evening. So much food was prepared beforehand. All of it was wasted, and I still had to pay over $1,500 on my company card to cover the set menu cost. I apologized profusely to the staff for wasting their time and resources, and then had to watch a stream of photos come from her and her restaurant group on our Microsoft Teams group chat, showing what a great time they were having. I was so embarrassed and betrayed, but it's been almost 4 years now, and she's still at the same level at the same company. Whilst in that time, I got a second promotion and leveraged it for a better paying role in a startup. Story 9, not a coworker per se, but I had a client that was becoming a friend. We had a few meetups outside work, met each other's wives, had them over for dinner, etc. I mentioned at one of our dinners that I was planning on moving on soon. He told the boss of the place I was working that I was thinking of leaving. Dog act. I was called into the office and had to break it to my boss way earlier than I would have liked, and it led to a bunch of awkward complications. I cut that guy out of my life. He tried to apologize later, saying that the boss dragged it out of him, but he was already dead to me. Story 10. Spent years criticizing, verbally abusing, micromanaging, NIT picking, sabotaging, undermining, isolating, and just about every bullying behavior he could think of, short of physical assault. He even wrote an independent performance review on me, full of ridiculous accusations, half-truths, invasions of privacy, and outright lies to continue his bullying. He demanded his review was added to my personnel file, so I'd forever have a black mark against me. For example, one of his points in his review was that I didn't contribute much to meetings of a committee. I didn't contribute much because he verbally abused and threatened me after something I said at one of these meetings, and I was totally intimidated. In his world, it was okay to subject me to a torrent of abuse and criticism for contributing to a meeting, and then later criticize me for not contributing to meetings of this same committee. I was damned if I do, damned if I don't. When he retired, I thought I might finally be able to get on with my job. But even then, he continued attending staff Christmas parties for several years and started attending, uninvited, and taking over meetings of a group I facilitated. I honestly didn't realize that level of viciousness and toxicity still existed and could go unchecked in the 21st century workplace until then. He was completely unhinged and a horrible person. Story 11. I was a junior graphic designer at the time, and he was a studio manager. He said he secretly asked everyone what they think about me so he could share it in the performance review. He said people neither liked or disliked me, and I had to be more outgoing. I'm autistic, and my job has nothing to do with entertaining people. I listen to the brief, talk to them, and give them the designs. My work was chosen over his multiple times. He made these stupid competitions where we all submit our work and the client chooses which they prefer. Anyway, in that same meeting, he told me all my accomplishments were not that big a deal because people only like my work because they like me, which contradicts what he said before, or because they have low standards. In one of his stupid competitions, my design was once again chosen over his. He took my design and adjusted it a lot, called me out the blue and told me how much better he made it. He asked if I agreed. I didn't agree and I said it in the most polite way. I'm not a confrontational person. He then proceeded to yell at me in front of everyone. I had quit my job and it impacted my mental health and self-confidence a long time. In a better place now though. Story 12. Ex-retail staff here. So everyone who worked with me knew I had a very dodgy ankle due to Achilles tendonitis. It had been a day. We closed at 6, it was 5:30. I was in so much pain, I'd been pushing through the whole day in pain. There were no customers. So I sat down on a chair for a few minutes just to rest my feet. My coworker asked if I was okay, etc. I'm just like, yeah, just gotta rest my ankle for a minute. Anyway, said coworker dobbed me in. The manager had gone home for the day, but the next day I was pulled aside and chastised for it. Yet when I asked for shorter shifts, they said they couldn't accommodate that request. Duckers. Ducked that job. I told them I could only do 25 hours a week because of my health. They wheedled away at me to work more and more overtime till eventually I was doing about 35 hours a week on my feet. The chronic understaffing and impact on my health, among other things, led to me having at least 2+ panic attacks at work each week. It's taken months for my mental health to recover. Story 13. I was selected for telling the pre-start joke on our crew. Had a gay coworker tell me to say a gay joke. I said, I can't do that. But he said, I'm the only gay guy, I will laugh at it. Told the joke, a few giggles happened. 3 months later, same gay guy was talking absolute crap about every coworker on site and making smart-ass comments on the two-way and continued to talk crap about one mistake I made, like I was the stupid person on earth. So I confronted him, told he is a piece of crap. His response was making an anonymous complaint to the company that I made an inappropriate joke at the pre-start that was extremely offensive to the gay community. 3 months after I told the joke, he left out the part about the joke being his and him laughing the hardest at the joke anyway. I was then denied a permanent job because of the report, missed out on an extra $300 per week, and stuck as a contractor. Welcome to Mining Story 14. Mine asked for help organizing a team town hall event with catering. She wasn't originally from Australia, so I thought I'd help since my background was in events. Anyways, I did the whole thing for her. All she did was put the presentation together. Little did I know, during the town hall, she got the full shout out and credits and completely left me out. The whole team here and other countries were thanking her, cheering her on, but it was me who did it all. And I confronted her about it and she screamed at me in front of one of the team manager, saying I'm a liar and I wanted to create drama. Even now, I have receipts of her emailing me, asking me for help and confirmation of tasks. So I left that as that. She asked me for help. Again, I declined. And then my manager pulled me aside saying that I'm not a team player, soon after I was let go. Story 15. When I was 19, I had a job in a law firm. My coworker and I had become good friends. We went out drinking regularly, stayed at each other's houses, even went skydiving together. She got promoted to a manager in training and stopped hanging out with me as much. I figured it was because she wanted to be more professional now as the manager, no hard feelings. I remember one day she was extremely cold towards me and I thought it was strange. That day I got fired for underperformance. It was awful. Pretty awful experience for me. I was very embarrassed. That night my friends had convinced me to go out with them to cheer me up. We went to this new pub that was very popular. I was on the dance floor and came face to face with my coworker. She looked at me and then completely ignored me. I will never forget it. Such a diss and very unkind. I figured she knew I was getting fired. Story 16. I used to work at a business-only bank. You can probably guess it. It was my first job in corporate and I was doing customer service. My manager, senior, used to write a weekly newsletter that went out to the entire company. She wrote a segment about me alluding to the fact and mentioned me by name that I'm a narcissist. She then went into detail in the email the origins of the word narcissist, the Greek story, and replaced my name with whatever the god or person was called. Imagine being the youngest person in a large company being bullied for everyone to see. I didn't realize it at the time that I was being bullied, but yeah, now I do. So awful. Story 17. Had a manager tell me I was a useless pause, as was my terminally ill colleague. He told me he couldn't stand the sight of me and wished I was a different race because those women are easy to control. He didn't like the fact I challenged him, stood up for what was right, and exposed him when he was repeatedly taking credit for someone else's work, all while claiming that person wasn't meeting expectation. Long story short, I left the company, a formal investigation was held in my absence, and I received a very carefully worded statement of regret from the company, acknowledging that how I was treated was not okay, but that it was the actions of the man and not endorsed by the company. If it happened today, I would make a killing in a court settlement, given all the witnesses I had to his outburst. He was made redundant shortly after, his job retitled and advertised soon after. Story 18. This annoying, gossiping, and backstabbing woman came into my orbit 7 years ago, begged me to get her out of one toxic division. Okay, she came to mine and reported to me. She snitched on all of the team to me endlessly. Things changed. She went one way, I another. A few years later, we are peers in hierarchy. Then I go on leave for 5 weeks. Came back, there's a vibe I can't pick, and the CEO calls me in. Okay, you report to her now. Naturally, I immediately said, I absolutely will not. Story 19. Not me, but soon after starting at a new corporate job in London at a big company, the team went out for a drinks night. I asked why one of the team never went out with them, but no one would tell me the exact reason. It was something of amusement for them, though. I found out later when one of the guys let me stop at his place for the night, rather than catch a cab, and in the night he tried to get into bed with me. Just no wasn't enough, and I nearly had to escalate. Being someone well aware of these tactics and not shy to deal with them appropriately, he eventually stopped trying. But everyone was asking how it went on the Monday, and that was how I figured out what happened to the guy who never socialized with them anymore. Story 20. The manager told me to organize dinner for him. He purposely did not include me in the meeting, and I was supposed to attend at the request of his manager. I found out later and he wanted to see my presentation. I knocked on the door and said to my manager, "That's all done for you." The bigger manager said, "We were waiting for your presentation." My manager said, "It's actually mine?" I was frozen, so I thought on the spot and how to get back at him, and I said, "The reservation for the strip club tonight is confirmed for you, and I organize a few private shows as well." The kicker, his wife was a higher manager in the same meeting. Big FU to my boss. He got fired 2 months later. Story 21. Not a coworker, but my ex-boss was berating me with all the swear word in the world when I answered correctly to his question, and he's assumed I was wrong. I said he is insane and went home and took a couple days off knowingly he has to submit a report the next day to his boss, and he could not do it without me. Notes. I was there for 8 years at that point, and he's only been there for 2 months. Because of this, my concern about his behavior carried quite a bit of load, and he's let go a couple months later due to bullying a staff member after we saw his behavior pattern. Story 22. I worked in a depth of 8 people, and it was a great team. I was the newest, but had been there a few months. There was a guy called Steve on the team. He and I worked together on a few things that he handed over to me when I started. We had a regular working relationship. Anyway, it was a Friday and it hit 5 o'clock. We were all gathering our things to go home, and one of my other colleagues, Mandy, says, "So, I'll see you at Steve's on Sunday?" I turned to her and said, "I don't know what you're talking about, so I guess not." It was instantly apparent that Steve was hosting something at his house and that the whole depth were invited except me. That was a kick in the guts. Story 23. Had a coworker who knew I was on a pip add fuel to the flame by dobbing me into the boss when I wasn't able to control a group of people. The worst current role as a food processor I have done was the other night at 2 a.m. where I am late on the production schedule. Have a new coworker with me who was close to the end of their training. We had a new problem pop up at the end of processing a batch that I had never seen before, and I could see all the flow rates slow down with liquid being shot out of a cooling heat exchanger. The new coworker was upstairs watching all of this, and I just lost the plot at everything in that moment and started yelling at him and the whole situation in general. Story 24. Had a very manipulative, combative, gaslighting direct report who made it their business to create unnecessary conflict with the others in my team despite being the one running to me in tears every other week because they couldn't handle said conflict that they were directly causing. Didn't get their way? The following week, me or one of the quieter direct reports would be the target. I didn't have an issue handling the constant threats to leave or the emotional breakdowns in a diplomatic way. It was the horse duckery they pulled after all that failed. Constant escalation up to pass. Then, showing up next day like nothing happened and everything was normal. Really put me off managing people, despite having a couple of fantastic people reporting to me that I enjoyed mentoring and coaching. Story 25. In a virtual meeting, an intern started talking about how excited they were to work with me on Project X. I messaged my coworker privately that I had no idea I was working on Project X until now, with a laughing emoji. That coworker told my manager something wildly different. I got a message from the manager saying, "Next time you have a problem with an assignment I delegate, come to me, not to coworker." I told him I had zero idea what he was talking about. He didn't believe me and told the coworker had said I was angry and ranting about being put on Project X with the intern. I have no idea if it was malicious or she actually got that impression. But to this day, I can't see a reason for it to be either. Story 26. Disabling comment and change tracking in a huge Word document, which was a technical response to a big contract proposal. Updating half of my comments to be incorrect, and then re-enabling change tracking back. I was very lucky having a copy of the doco sent to my boss with all the correct comments about an hour before. Story 27. 15 years ago, This junior, we had eavesdropped on a conversation I had with a PM and disagreed with something we were talking about. Told him nicely to stay in his lane. Later on, I get my boss coming to ask me some curiously targeted questions about the work I was doing with that PM. Get taken off it, and the junior gets put on it instead. Obviously, I've been dobbed on. He ends up taking so long with it, putting up blockers, disagreeing with the project/PM business, to the point they give up and cancel it. We're both still in the same org. Junior has managed to sniff up so many trouser legs to get a higher role. Now he's attached to the rear end of anyone in the exec. Story 28. Told me I was an amazing manager. Best thing since sliced bread. Helped them through multiple breakdowns at work and very poor performance. Covered for them. They lodged a bullying complaint that was thankfully dismissed in full with 0 findings and our own investigators saying it was a joke. Destroyed my career path massively. Found out another manager was the target because they were the ones effectively demanding all the extra work, etc. They promised roles. Got the complaint lodged. I now never ever trust anyone at work. Best part was I had all the emails and Teams chats telling me how amazing and supportive I was. Investigator, didn't love getting an export of 4,000 emails with everything. Story 29, when I was 21 or so, I was in a new sales role and walking the streets with a coworker, divide and conquer. At the end of trying for leads for hours, I asked if she wanted to go across the road to get an LLB and just chill for 10 minutes before heading back into the office. She got really weird about it, so I dropped it. She then told management that I was angling to try and steal her potential leads. I got a grilling and ultimately fired. I hated the job and wouldn't have passed probation anyway, but it was pretty yuck to be on the receiving end of manufactured drama, that's for sure.